All right, folks, we're halfway through November, and that means we are smack dab in the middle of new compound bow season. All the big companies are releasing their new flagship bows, and considering I review gear for a living, this video I'm about to share is going to seem very counterproductive, but I am going to give you 5 reasons why you should not buy a new compound bow this year. If I have learned anything, it is that the single biggest contributing factor to your success in the field is time. Time that you can spend hunting and time that you can spend scouting. Now, the reason I started Mindful Reviews is not to convince people to spend more money on gear, but it was actually to take some of that effort off of them and do the legwork and the homework for them so that they could focus more of their energy on getting out in the field. Now listen, I know this video is called 5 reasons why you should not buy a new bow this year, but really I'm just using compound bows as a vehicle to have a discussion about upgrading your gear. When you should upgrade your gear, when you shouldn't upgrade your gear, why other people and companies might be financially incentivized in making you think you need to upgrade your gear. So I thought, given that all the new bows are about to come out, it would be a fantastic time to have this conversation, sober everybody up, and give you some straight advice so you don't feel like you need to run right out to your nearest gear shop and upgrade just because you saw a fancy commercial for some new gear. So opening up our list of top 5 reasons, we're going to start with the obvious: time and money. And the reason I'm going to discuss these 2 items together is that I believe time and money are completely interdependent upon each other. So let's take a look at this from a very practical perspective. You need time to decide which bow you're going to buy. Then you need to know which accessories are going to go on that bow. Then you need to build that bow or have it built for you. You need to tune it. And then if your new bow setup is any different than your old bow setup, you might need to reconfigure your entire arrow system. So not only do you need the time to make all those decisions, you need the money to buy all those things. And that's money that could be spent on gas, tags, food for hunting. Finally, the biggest relationship between time and money that I don't think people have really understood yet is that you should be evaluating how much time you're able to take off work each year. Just appreciate that if you buy a new bow, it's going to require a lot of time and money, and that time and money has to come from somewhere, and it's likely going to come from energy and focus that you were going to be spending on hunting and scouting. Up next, we're going to get a little bit nerdy, and I'm going to talk about something called cognitive load. Now, some of you may remember I used to be a business consultant, and I specialized in behavioral economics and behavioral strategy, which means a lot of what I did for companies was explain to them how people think, how they behave, and why they make the decisions they do. So when it comes to purchase decisions, human beings deal with a lot of cognitive load. That is, there's a lot of pressure placed on your decision-making process when it comes time to buy a new product. And there's certain biases or heuristics that come into play, like decision fatigue, confirmation bias, post-purchase rationalization. Now, all of these things require cognitive effort, and you only have so much mental energy that you can dedicate to making decisions. A lot of recent research has also shown that people make decisions emotionally and then rationalize them logically after the fact. In fact, I bet you most people watch my videos not to know if they should go buy something, but to confirm that they actually bought the right thing. And they've actually shown in these studies that we remember it in reverse. Like if you ask people 2 sets of questions right after they purchase, you will realize that it was an emotional trigger that got them to buy the new product. Like, let's look at these new bows. You run out, you watch a new video for the new Hoyt, you see Dudley or MFJJ talking about how this is the fastest bow ever, it's this beautiful carbon fiber work of art. You get emotionally triggered, I want to buy that bow. You go and buy it. You will be honest with me about those things right after the purchase or right after you make the decision to buy the purchase. If I ask you a similar set of questions 2 to 4 weeks later, you will actually recount all of the logical reasons why you made the purchase. So the takeaway that I would like to land for you about the concept of cognitive load is that every time we make a decision, especially a major purchasing decision, there is a lot of underlying psychological factors that are going on that require effort, some type of caloric expenditure, and create some level of doubt within us. And so The fewer of those decisions that we force ourselves to make, the more energy and focus we have to dedicate to other things. I want to give you a prime example. There's also a lot of evidence to show that the vast majority of people who go on a diet cheat in the evening. And this is because willpower is a finite resource, and it is also expended from cognitive load. So when you wake up in the morning, your tank of willpower is so full. You spend that throughout the day exercising a certain amount of discipline in regards to whatever your goals are. Not eating crap food in this particular example. By the time you get to the evening, that tank of willpower is almost done. But it's not just from not eating. It's from making decisions. It's from executing things. It's from all the activities and the behaviors that require some type of caloric expenditure or some type of cognitive load that occurred throughout the day. And then by the end of the day, you got no willpower left and you have the 2 cookies that you've been fighting having all day. So this is an example of how we have a finite set of cognitive resources. And every time we ask something of those cognitive resources, there's got to be a compromise and something else has got to give. So if you want to make a brand new purchase, just recognize this is going to take a toll on those cognitive resources. Now, number 3 is a little more straightforward, and it's a concept I want to call manufactured need. Okay. When they release a new product, and this is not just bows, they will use all kinds of marketing hype to convince you that this new product is fundamentally different than the old product. But I would argue we have not seen a major revolution in bow technology over the last several years. And I would argue one step further that you can look back and really bow manufacturers go through let's call it a fundamental upgrade every 5 to 7 years. And after that, they do these small iterative changes, but they use marketing hype to make it feel like these are major changes. What I would ask you to do is actually look at the technology from the previous year's bow and look at the technology from the current year's bow. Has there been an actual fundamental upgrade, or have they done some minor iteration and are using marketing jargon to kind of make it seem as if it's a fundamental upgrade? Number 4 is reliability. Reliability is extremely important in all of our gear systems. In order to kind of convey this concept, I want to share a synopsis of a short story that Arthur C. Clarke wrote called Superiority. Arthur C. Clarke was a science fiction writer, phenomenal writer. I highly recommend all of his stuff. And he wrote this short story called Superiority. In a nutshell, it's about this sci-fi story about these 2 different races out in space having a big war. One group is more technologically advanced than the other group. However, they're so in love with their technology that every time they get a new technology, they want to roll it out in the war. And then they go back to doing R&D to create a new technology. So they're basically continually caught in this upgrade loop because they think having the best technology is what's going to win them this war. The other group, recognizing that they're at a disadvantage from a technology perspective, decides to just grind it out. We're going to work with what we got, and we're just going to push until hopefully we can win this thing. And as the story plays out, the technologically superior race was so obsessed with creating new technology that they ended up losing the war because they were too busy iterating technology as opposed to actually fighting the war. I think we see, and I have fallen victim to the exact same concept taking place in hunting all the time. People are more worried about having new gear than they are about actually hunting. And I know several guys, a good buddy of mine, Steve Isdall, he's on Instagram as ProGuide66. I doubt that guy could even tell you the brand name of the bow that he shoots. He could not give 2 shits about his gear, and he is an absolute killer. I live in British Columbia. There are dudes like that all over British Columbia. So the message here with reliability is that you are better off with less technologically advanced gear that you're comfortable with and spending more time trying to accomplish the actual goal, which is getting out in the field and hunting. All right, last one. Confidence kills. There's a bunch of hunting influencers out there who are constantly urging you to always be tampering with your gear and be testing and buying and trying new things and trying to eke out 0.5% performance improvements here or there. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion, but I strongly disagree with this perspective for 99% of hunters. Unless you have an excess of time and money, I think it's a distraction. And if you look at the incentives for these influencers, every single time one of these influencers offers you a code, they are being financially incentivized for you to go out and buy that product. So why do they want you constantly upgrading things? Because they make money every time you upgrade something. You know, the reason that I created Mindful Reviews is that I have zero financial interest in you buying gear. Whether you buy 1 sleeping bag, 10 sleeping bags, or 0 sleeping bags, it does not impact me financially in any way, shape, or form. And I think this whole concept to always be trying to improve your gear to the point where you're obsessed about these like little tiny micro improvements is pushed down on us from all these large corporations. Most of the gear we buy should last you 10 or 20 years. Like a spotting scope is going to last you decades. A sleeping bag should last you a decade. How are these companies going to stay in business if you only bought 1 sleeping bag every 10 or 15 years or 1 optic every 2 decades? So they financially incentivize these influencers to create all this content convincing you that you constantly need to upgrade. And here's the thing. Every time you change something in your system, you need to get your confidence back with that new change. You get a new bow. Takes a while to get confident with that bow. You get a new sight. You get a new weapon. Even boots, sleeping bags, tents. I mean, I have tested an unbelievable amount of gear over the last few years, and not all of it works all the time. And because I go on some pretty intense backcountry hunts, I have to take the time and energy to test that out beforehand. And sometimes I'm in situations where I don't have as much confidence in my gear, whether it's taking a kill shot, whether or not a shelter is going to live through a storm. So again, confidence kills. The saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, carries a lot of weight when it comes to gear. Sometimes I wish I didn't review gear for a living because I'll get my backcountry system to the point where it is perfect. I love it the way it is. And if I didn't do this kind of stuff, I would literally rock that system for the next 10 years. But unfortunately, somewhat fortunately, I have to or get to go out and test a bunch of new gear, so I'm constantly changing things. But for average dudes with average incomes who are really just looking to get after it as much as possible, I think it's a much better strategy to just dial one system in, get used to that system, get confident with that system, and then go spend as much time out in the field as you possibly can. And then when there are some fundamental upgrades, like let's look at bows. I had my Pro Defiant 34 for 5 years before I upgraded to the RX7. And I would argue that there is a fundamental difference between the Pro Defiant 34 and the RX7. We're now on the RX9. I do not believe that there is a fundamental difference between the RX7 and the RX9. I think the RX9 is marginally better than the RX7, but I do not believe that if you own an RX7 today, that it necessitates going out and buying an RX9. And in fact, the difference in performance is so minute and the difference in price is so great, I might actually argue it's probably a better time to go buy last year's bows, because the iterations have been so minor, but you can save so much money because people perceive these bows as not being worth as much. I really believe the bow companies need to do themselves a favor and get away from these yearly upgrade cycles. If you look at what they have to spend on marketing, R&D, and all the other facets, shipping, packaging, to release a brand new bow every single year, or for some companies, 3 or 4 new bows, one in each of their lines, with just minor improvements, I think they would be much better off. Like, look at guns. That doesn't happen in guns. You know what I mean? Like, Tikka doesn't release a new T3X every single year. They might have a small variant that comes out where there's like a little bit different paint, or they give you the option of like a different muzzle brake, but these aren't new models. They don't do entire new marketing campaigns. I just think they're stuck in this rut where this is what they've done for so long that you expect them to release a new bow, but we're just caught in this vicious product cycle loop where they end up wasting more money and we end up feeling like we need to buy a new bow every year when we really don't. Now, I realize that may have come off as a little bit heavy-handed, and I'm not saying you shouldn't buy a new bow every now and then. And if you enjoy buying new bows and tinkering, have at her. This video was for those people that have a system that they trust and they like, but they feel compelled because of the advertising and because of the behaviors of less than scrupulous influencers who are trying to constantly convince you you need something when you don't. And I know, as one of the gear guys, sometimes my messaging can come off trying to convince you to buy a new thing. And so I wanted to clarify my position on that. I don't believe you should constantly buy new gear. I believe that when you need a new piece of gear, you should take your time and energy and decide which piece fits best. All right, kind of a tongue-in-cheek video this morning, but I was watching all the marketing stuff come out for the new bows. I just really felt compelled to put this together. So before I wrap it up, just let me run through these from the top one more time. Here's 5 reasons you should not buy a new bow this year. Number 5, save yourself time and money. Number 4, don't put excess cognitive load on yourself when it's not necessary. Save that decision making and willpower for things that matter more to you, that are going to result in you being out in the field more. Number 3, manufactured need. Don't let these companies convince you that they've come out with some type of fundamental upgrade through the use of overhyped marketing gibberish, when in reality, all they've done is a small iterative upgrade. Number 2, reliability. Constantly getting caught in an upgrade cycle is going to cost you reliability in your kit, and that could mean not getting out as much, having gear fail on you while you're away, or not getting a kill shot at a perfect time. So instead of always being focused on buying something new, maybe focus a little bit more on just using the reliable kit that you've already got. And finally, coming in at number 1, confidence kills. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Don't let these influencers who are financially incentivized with these affiliate codes convince you that you constantly need to be testing and iterating with every new little thing that comes out. If you have a system that works and you're confident in it, that's all you need. Continue on with that. And again, spend your excess time and energy getting out in the field, hunting and scouting. So if you found this helpful in any way, or if there's other concepts that you'd like me to touch on from time to time that aren't just hardcore gear reviews, please drop a note in the comments below. If you could take a moment and hit like or subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. Hunting content and gear content does not organically get pushed very high up in the algorithm on YouTube. So any help from you guys is greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you for tuning in.